Hello everyone and welcome to this webinar, Living Well with IBS. My name is Danny and I'm a CBT therapist here in the Wellbeing service. This webinar will be around 20 to 25 minutes. Before we start the webinar, we're going to talk a little bit about safety and about risk to make sure you know which services are available should they be needed. As a wellbeing service, we're keen to encourage people to be open about how they're feeling, especially when they're going through difficult times. It's not unusual for some people to experience a time in their life where they notice thoughts that life's not worth living or thoughts of harming themselves in some way. Whilst we're not a crisis service, if you or someone you know is experiencing this, then there are support options out there available. So firstly, we have NHS 111 and 999, and these are numbers that we can contact if we need urgent mental health support. The helpline is available all day, every day. We also have access to Samaritans on 116 123, or you can email joe@samaritans.org. The Samaritans are a listening service and are able to support you by listening, and they have volunteers trained in talking about suicide and emotional distress from a Samaritan's perspective. You can also contact support from your GP at the earliest possible opportunity. If you're concerned about a child or young person, you can also contact Childline on 0800 1111. So if we make a start on today's webinar, here's what we're hoping to cover today. So the physical aspects of IBS, the psychological impact of IBS, the IBS vicious cycle, and steps to manage things better. You may be surprised to hear that IBS is relatively common. You may not have heard much about it because sometimes people find it difficult to talk about their symptoms. However, studies have shown that 15 to 20% people in the Western countries experience IBS sometime during their life. It is more common in women and often occurs in early 20s and early 30s. However, the symptoms of IBS may also come and go over a lifetime. So, IBS is a set of symptoms primarily caused by irregularities in the movement of the bowel, a more sensitive bowel, and an altered production of mucus in the bowel. IBS is often referred to as a medically unexplained experience. But how can that be when we experience all of these physical symptoms? The answer is because IBS is a problem of function rather than disease. We have these symptoms not because the bowel tissue is damaged or infected, but because the bowel just isn't functioning as well as it could do. But it's not only the physical discomfort these symptoms bring, they can also start to impact us socially and psychologically. The anxieties and worries and consequences of the physical symptoms have a knock-on effect on all areas of life. Often, these negatively affect job performance, social confidence, family and relationships. In fact, the physical and psychological are very closely linked when it comes to IBS. We'll explore more of that as we move on. So the common symptoms of IBS: constipation, diarrhea or alternating bouts of both, cramping pain, excessive bloating and wind, urgent need to open our bowels, feeling of incomplete emptying of bowels, nausea, excess mucus production and fatigue. So first we need to take a quick tour of the digestive system, and you might be interested in the timescale of the function from start to finish. Some of us suffering from IBS might be heard saying, "It goes right through me," when they're talking about food and having eaten something. But looking at the time it really takes means that can't be the case. So our food enters our mouth and is chewed for up to 1 minute, but probably takes a lot less for most of us. It mixes with saliva and the digestive system begins. When we swallow, it takes just 2 to 3 seconds to travel down the esophagus into the stomach. In the stomach, the food mixes with gastric juices and acid, where it further breaks down for a period of 2 to 4 hours. Now, in liquid form, it travels along the small intestine for anywhere between 1 and 4 hours, where gut bacteria helps to release nutrients the body can absorb. The final journey is along the colon, where the waste product we don't need prepares to be eliminated. This phase of the journey can take anywhere from 10 hours to several days. So looking at this diagram here, we can sort of add this time up and see that it's quite a long time. So, taking a closer look at the colon, this is the part of the bowel largely responsible for the IBS symptoms we experience. Your colon is about 1.5 metres long, or about 5 feet, and its main function is to convert liquid waste products from the small intestine into more solid products, poo, also known as stools. 2 to 3 times a day, we have waves of peristaltic contractions, similar to muscle contractions, and these are to keep the waste in transit. The wall of the colon directly behind the waist contracts, while the wall of the colon in front relaxes, gently massaging things along. To help it out, our gut produces mucus. This is similar to what we blow out of our nose, and this lines the inner wall of the colon, and this helps stools move along more smoothly and easier. While breaking down our food, the millions of gut bacteria release gas as a byproduct. These gases also travel along the colon to be expelled. The colon also has the function of absorbing water to firm things up. So this is what happens when our gut is functioning well. So we've got the colon with the peristaltic contractions, we've got healthy mucus lining, we've got good gut bacteria, and the water is being absorbed. So people who experience IBS tend to have irregular contractions. Our brain tells our colon when a peristaltic wave is needed, but it sometimes gets it wrong and the contractions can end up too fast or too slow. If the contractions in the colon are too fast, spasms occur and much softer stools may result. This can sometimes trigger diarrhea. If the movements slow down too much, cramping and firmer stools may result. This can sometimes cause constipation. We also seem to have either too much or too little mucus production. You may notice the excess mucus production when you pass a stool. The production of mucus is related to the amount of pressure in the bowel. When the contractions speed up, high pressure is created, resulting in excess mucus production, but when the contractions are too slow, low pressure causes too little mucus production. The amount of mucus will also contribute to whether we experience diarrhea or constipation. The gut bacteria can become overactive, leading to an increase in the gases they produce. This causes the bloating and distension we often experience with IBS and the embarrassing stomach noises and excess wind. And finally, the amount of water reabsorbed from the waste product will also determine the consistency of our stools. If the contractions are too fast, moving the waste along quicker, less water is able to be absorbed, resulting in diarrhea. Or, if the contractions are too slow, the waste remains in the colon longer and more water is absorbed, making the stools harder and more compact, resulting in constipation. So we've got the peristaltic contractions could either be too fast or too slow. We've got the mucus lining could either be too much or too little. And we've got the gut bacteria which could be overactive. Water absorption, too much or too little. So with IBS we often hear people say, but why me? We're going to take a look at 3 possible reasons why someone experiences IBS. So the first one is a common gut bacteria that causes stomach bugs such as gastroenteritis, Campylobacter. There's also others such as E. coli and Salmonella which can trigger food poisoning. These bacteria release toxins which can affect the nerves which stimulate the muscles in the wall of the intestine. The initial bout of food poisoning or gastroenteritis increases the nerve sensitivity in the colon. And for some of us, this sensitivity remains long after we have recovered from the initial infection. Research shows that up to 20% of people who experience food poisoning or gastroenteritis may warrant a diagnosis of IBS 6 months after their initial bout. The second reason is there's also evidence to suggest that some people are more genetically sensitive to feelings in their gut. So they might be able to notice movement within their digestive system, and it's possibly inherited from their parents. For some people, IBS starts after experiencing stressful events or prolonged anxiety in life. Research shows that people who are under stress or who tend to be perfectionists with high standards are more likely to develop IBS. So it's often said that the body holds the score. meaning the body signals to our brain that there is a danger or a problem, and our brain triggers the fight or flight response. With IBS, this triggers the sensitive nerves in the bowel. When someone's experienced one or more of these triggers, it makes us much more susceptible to having a sensitive or irritable bowel. So we've got the food poisoning or gastroenteritis, the genetic susceptibility, and the stress. So we've talked about the physical aspects of IBS. Now let's take a look at the psychological aspects of IBS. This is where the stress component comes in. There is a continual two-way communication between the brain and the digestive system via the nervous system and neurotransmitters. This two-way interaction ultimately controls the muscle movements in the colon. Unlike other muscle groups, such as our arms and our legs, which are under our voluntary control, the muscles of our digestive system are controlled automatically by signals from the brain and the nervous system. So the brain sends messages to the gut, which either speeds up or slows down the motion of the muscles, but our gut also sends messages to the brain. You might be familiar with some of the sayings here. I've got a gut feeling, my gut reaction is, and my gut is telling me. So these expressions are used for a reason. The gut is sensitive to our feelings and emotion, so anger, anxiety, sadness, elation, happiness, and all of these can trigger symptoms in the gut. So when people say things like my stomach dropped when they're describing a reaction to bad news, or I had butterflies in my stomach when they're describing the anticipation of something exciting, there's a reason for this because the brain and the gut are so connected. So we find ourselves in a situation where our extra sensitive gut can send signals to the brain. Then in response, our extra sensitive brain sends signal to the gut, triggering the contractions, mucus production, etc. This creates a cycle where the symptoms of IBS can both be the cause and the reaction to stress. So let's take a look at a real example in action. We're going to talk about a case study of someone called Kate. So Kate started experiencing IBS in her mid-30s, where she began noticing the physical symptoms of IBS, and she'd find that she needed to urgently rush to the toilet more regularly than usual. Over time, the symptoms started becoming much more difficult and much more regular. She started checking after she'd been to the toilet and was noticing that her poos, her stools, were much looser than usual, and also noticed some mucus. She became alarmed, fearing that something was terribly wrong, and visited her GP. So her GP requested a sample, took blood tests, and asked for a full description of what had been going on for Kate. Later on that week, all the results came back clear. So Kate was relieved to know that there was nothing medically wrong, but it did leave her confused as why she was experiencing all these physical problems. Her GP asked her more questions about her history and her current lifestyle, and concluded that she was experiencing IBS. So Kate had lived a pretty healthy life with very little health problems. However, she did have a particularly difficult experience with gastroenteritis a couple of years ago. She remembers how quickly it had come on, and 1 minute getting on with her day, and the next minute painful abdominal cramps and a wave of nausea, only just making it to the bathroom in time. She remembers the suddenness, the sensations, the pain, the discomfort were all very traumatic and had left a lasting impression on her to this day. Kate had also experienced some prolonged stress in her life, working hard to meet the expectations at university and setting herself some really high standards to achieve. Then Kate went on to putting a lot of effort trying to please everyone in both her work and her personal life. Kate started to notice there was a pattern with her IBS symptoms. Even small amounts of stress could trigger the physical symptoms to flare up. The symptoms would trigger thoughts about her previous experience of the suddenness of this historical stomach bug. In turn, these would increase her stress levels. She was trapped in a cycle that would impact on her work life, social life, decisions she made on a day-to-day basis. So here is an example. Kate had an opportunity to go on a summer holiday with her friends. It was an amazing deal, and she'd fly out to a beautiful villa, flights and transfers, all sorted by her friends. A holiday seemed like a dream for many people. But there was only one problem. Kate had been experiencing her IBS symptoms building up to this. She desperately wanted to go on the holiday and unwind and have an opportunity to spend time with friends. But it involved being at the mercy of the airport, a flight, her friends' expectations of her joining in with activities, and let's face it, just the taxi ride to the airport triggered lots of anxious predictions. So, if we look at the Kate's cycle here, so the thoughts, what if I need a toilet? What if there is no toilet? What if I get caught short? What if people hear or see? Her behaviours were to risk assess, to feel stressed, to avoid things. And she started noticing physical feelings such as cramps, bloating feeling, and urgent feeling need to rush to the toilet. So, what does Kate do about it? She starts to risk assess her thoughts, triggered by the memories of the suddenness of her stomach bug. She starts to stress out about it. This stress fuels her physical symptoms and feeds into more images and thoughts about getting IBS in the taxi, the plane, at the beach, or out for dinner. Imagine her stress, anxiety levels at the thought of that. Before she knows it, she's convinced herself she won't be able to cope. So she emails her friends and says, "I'm really sorry, I'm too busy for work. I can't get the time off to come. I'm really disappointed about this. I hope you guys have a great time." So how do we break this cycle? So we're going to look here at the cognitive behavioural approach of breaking this cycle. So we're going to challenge our thoughts and we're going to challenge our behaviours. So we're going to look at steps to breaking the cycle. So there are 4 steps we're going to look at to get our IBS under better management. So let's have a look at them all each in turn. So step 1 is challenging our thoughts. So what's the absolute worst thing that can happen? How likely is it that that will happen? What might you do if it did happen? And would it really be the end of life as we know it? Is it really such a big deal if it did happen? What would it be like if we were no longer afraid of it? And where is the evidence to support this thought? Do we think it's going to happen, or do we think we're worried about it happening from something we've experienced in our past? Once we've examined and challenged our thoughts with these questions, there is an opportunity to see things from a slightly different angle. So for Kate, when she challenged her thoughts, she came up with these. I often felt like I urgently needed the toilet, but I've actually always managed to either hold it or just about make it on time. She said the worst case scenario would be that she does get short and other people do notice, but I would be able to deal with it and I would be able to move on. Other things that she came up with is identifying and challenging her behaviours, so the step 2 here. So Kate's behaviours often started with risk assessing, mentally checking out how her bowels are feeling, perhaps adapting what and when she eats prior to going out anywhere or while she is out. She also avoided certain types of food even though she likes them, not committing to decisions or plans just in case, and avoiding things altogether and missing out on a lot of things. I'm sure you have some of these behaviours of your own, perhaps taking over-the-counter medication to control bowel movements. Example could be that Kate talked about laxatives to empty her bowels, or taking anti-diarrhea medication to slow everything down so she's not caught out. But having challenged her thoughts, she stands half a chance of adapting some of these safety behaviours that she normally does. So let's look at step 3, try behavioural experiments. So to achieve this, Kate will need to try out some behavioural experiments of dropping some of the things she normally does or doesn't do to keep herself safe. Think of things like testing out the urge to go to the toilet. You can try at home to start with, and when you get the urge to go, see if you're able to delay it slightly and almost imagining that you are somewhere where the toilets are not immediately available, and we can see what happens. We can start off small by delaying it for 30 seconds to a minute. We can then slowly build that up to 2-3 minutes and so on. We might find out that we can hold it a lot longer than we think. We can also test out going to places without a convenient toilet within arm's reach. So go out to places where there are no toilets and test out whether the worst thing happens. Or test out going to places where toilets might be at the front of wherever we are, and it might be a few minutes to 10 minutes to 20 minutes away from where we will be. If you avoid using public toilets for a fear of the noises, the sounds, the experience, you can also test that out. Try to use some of the public toilets and feeling comfortable in that space. Some people with IBS try to eliminate foods that seem to aggravate their symptoms. Often it's the anxiety causing the symptoms, not the food, so maybe test out eating small amounts of the food that we'd eliminated each at a time when there are no anxiety triggers, and see if the symptoms appear or not. Sometimes we can try eating the foods at home and see whether we have symptoms, and does that differ from when we eat the foods outside of the home? So we're not saying that doing these behaviour experiments will be easy, but it can really help us overcome our anxieties, and as a result it can actually reduce those physical symptoms of IBS. The final step is step 4, managing stress. So let's have a think about addressing our stress levels. Being people pleasers, or always saying yes, never saying no, never having enough time to rest, or avoiding and missing out on experiences, living life dictated by our bowels, all go towards maintaining our IBS. The stressors can throw a spanner into the works if not taken care of. Think of a car. If it's driven furiously without regular services, things start to go wrong. A car that is taken care of or driven with care and given regular services will perform better and last longer. Just like our cars, we need to pay special attention towards ourselves if we want to remain healthy and get on top of our symptoms. We all know by now that we need to have regular exercise and a balanced, healthy diet. So if you don't, we would urge you to maybe start thinking about that as the first step. But most importantly, when it comes to IBS, we need to relax. Whatever happens, let's try to take things in our stride. We're going to do a 2 to 3 minute mindfulness exercise now. So what I'd like you to do is find yourself a comfortable position, maybe sort of close your eyes if you feel happy to, getting yourself comfortable and allowing your body to settle. And when you're ready, gently take a deep breath in through your nose and slowly exhale through your mouth. Now begin by focusing on your breath. Feel the air as it enters in through your nose and notice the gentle rise of your abdomen as you inhale. As you exhale, feel the release of any tension, letting your body soften. You don't need to force anything, simply allow your breath to flow naturally at its own rhythm. Try to focus your attention on your stomach, noticing any sensations, whether there's any tension, bloating or discomfort, and just simply noticing it. You might feel some tightness or unease, and that's okay. Instead of resisting, just invite yourself to gently observe that. There's no need to fix or change anything right now. You're just allowing your body to be aware of how you're feeling in this moment. As you continue to breathe, imagine sending your breath down into your belly. Picture each inhale bringing a sense of calm to your digestive system. Feel the breath like a gentle wave, soothing any areas of discomfort. And with each exhale, imagining releasing any tension or stress that you might be stored in your stomach. If your mind wanders, gently guide your attention back to your breath, back to the gentle rhythm of your belly rising and falling. Allow your body to relax deeper with each breath, trusting in your body's ability to find balance. Now take a moment to bring some compassion to yourself. You're navigating a challenging experience and it's okay to feel the way you do. You can say to yourself, I can be kind to myself and my body might find more comfort. Take one more deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. When you're ready, you can slowly bring your awareness back and noticing the sounds or sensations around you. And when you feel ready and when you feel right, you can gently open your eyes again. So we've come to the end of our IBS webinar, but I'm going to just tell you a little bit more about our service and some further support that is available to you. So within the service we have access to support from our peer mentors. So our peer mentors are people that have lived with mental health conditions and are experiencing their own personal recovery. So they're someone who is able to share their recovery journey and promote hope to others. They are someone who is employed specifically as a result of their lived experience, and they can motivate and encourage others that are accessing support from our service. We also have our employment advisors, and they are here to support anybody who is currently referred to the Wellbeing Service by providing advice, motivation and guidance about the barriers that they may be facing in relation to work. They focus on helping anyone accessing the service return to work after a period of sickness or absence. They can help people remain in work if you're struggling being there, and they can also help people find rewarding and sustainable work. We have lots of wellbeing social and community events, and these are free social events often hosted in person or securely on Zoom, and you can find out more information on our website. You can also email socials and volunteering at wellbeingn&w.co.uk, and you can also, that's for Norfolk, and you can also contact suffolk.communityteam@nsft.nhs.uk for Suffolk social events. Also, you can visit our website, which is shown here. If you would like to continue to increase your understanding of mental health issues and work towards creating a supportive working environment, you can also attend our Wellbeing Community Champion training. So you'll learn about mental health and why people may struggle and signs you may notice when someone is having a hard time. You'll also learn how you might approach someone and start a conversation, as well as all about the Wellbeing Service and how we can offer support so you can effectively signpost, and in return you will get to be part of a group of like-minded people in a supportive environment. We've now reached the end of our webinar on IBS today. I hope you found this helpful, and thank you for watching. Here is a slide with some details on how you can access support from the service and access our social links.